On episode summaries, today I'll be doing episode 405, Shocks and Bonds. The episode begins with Ash in one of the stadiums in the Evergrande complex, getting ready to battle an opponent of his in the next round, who he had been matched with the day before. Of course, Ash and his opponent were standing on opposite sides, his opponent being a guy named Clark, who liked to conduct his Pokemon much like a musical conductor, which Max found out when he looked up Clark's information in his Pokénav, which had a database related to this year's Evergrande conference. And he also found out that Clark was apparently a celebrity because of his talent to conduct his Pokemon like a musical conductor. The referee then clarified that the battle was another double battle, just like the previous rounds. So Ash sent out his Grovyle and Glalie, while Clark sent out his Quilava and a Pokemon that Ash immediately recognized, Charizard. While the audience cheered for all these Pokemon, especially the people who were fans of Clark due to his celebrity status, being fangirls, Max was excited by Ash's choice of Pokemon, while May commented that it seems as though Clark happened to be a Fire-type specialist, since both the Pokemon he chose were Fire types. Clark then pulled out his conductor, getting ready to conduct, well no shit, and the referee declared that it was time for the battle to begin, as May, Max, and Brock watched intently while May held Pikachu. Ash quickly told Grovyle to attack Charizard with Pound, and told Glalie to attack Quilava with Headbutt. However, as both Pokemon went towards Charizard and Quilava, Clark calmly conducted his Charizard to counter with Heat Wave against the Pound, and Quilava to counter with Flame Wheel against the Headbutt. At first, Ash thought that the conducting was kind of cool, but he didn't really think so when Quilava wrapped itself in flames using Flame Wheel and smashed into Glalie, knocking Glalie back, and Charizard knocked Grovyle back with its Heat Wave, rendering Grovyle and Glalie's attacks useless, making Max extremely worried, while May and Brock tried to comfort him, but they were worried as well. Clark asks Ash what he thought of his moves, as his cheerleaders cheer him on to do his absolute best. Ash responds not with words, but instead by telling Glalie to use an Icy Wind, although the Icy Wind doesn't do jack shit against Charizard or Quilava, as the attack simply just goes over them, no damage at all. Clark then tells his Charizard to use Steel Wing on Grovyle, and he tells his Quilava to use Quick Attack on Glalie. So Charizard dived towards Grovyle, getting its wings ready for a massive attack, while Quilava sped towards Glalie. Ash knew that his opponents were moving too fast to be able to dodge the attacks, so he simply told Glalie and Grovyle to brace themselves. Charizard smashed its wings against Grovyle, who struggled to keep its balance. But at the end of the day, the Steel Wing didn't do a whole lot, since Grovyle was able to jump out of the way after a few seconds. As for Quilava and Glalie though, Quilava managed to knock Glalie back, making Ash worried. Clark got a bit cocky, not ordering any attacks, instead just observing, thinking that he already had this in the bag after those attacks, but Ash was determined to prove Clark wrong, deciding to have both Grovyle and Glalie focus on Quilava, since it was likely the most biggest threat. So he quickly ordered a Pound from Grovyle and a Headbutt from Glalie, both towards Quilava. Quilava tried to avoid the attacks, as Quilava sped up with Quick Attack. But Grovyle was just as fast as Quilava, so it negated its Quick Attack and slammed its tail into Quilava, knocking Quilava back and slowing it down enough for Glalie to sweep in and headbutt it. Max got hyped up and commented that those attacks just did a lot of damage to Quilava, so Ash may actually be able to win, although Clark remained calm and told Ash that the battle was reaching its climax and he was going to win, not Ash, following up by ordering Quilava to use Quick Attack on Glalie, and Charizard to use its Heat Wave, also on Glalie. If Ash was going to team up on Quilava, then Clark would team up on Glalie. Ash responded by having Grovyle defend Glalie against Quilava's Quick Attack, blocking the attack, allowing Glalie to use Icy Wind on Charizard as it approached with Heat Wave. The Icy Wind and Heat Wave then collided, which caused an explosion that knocked both Charizard and Quilava back. Because of this, Ash saw a chance to attack and had Grovyle use Pound on Quilava, sending it flying back and knocking it out as the referee officially announces that Quilava was unable to battle, and May, Max, and Brock cheer. The announcer, over the intercom, because yes, these matches had these now, admitted that Clark sure seemed like he was in a pinch. But the announcer also noted that Clark didn't look too worried, and that was because Clark had another idea up his sleeve, which was ordering Charizard to use Steel Wing. However, Grovyle was able to dodge, avoiding the attack by just an inch. At Clark's command, however, Charizard backtracked, and it managed to actually hit Grovyle with Steel Wing when it went back this time, sending Grovyle flying into the stadium wall, cracking the wall. Ash pleads for Grovyle to get up, but taking all those attacks was too much for Grovyle, and he was knocked out, so the referee officially declared that Grovyle was unable to battle, so now it was a one-on-one, Charizard versus Glalie. As the screen displayed this, Clark's fangirls cheered, while May, Max, and Brock became worried. Clark then declared that he was going to finish off the battle, since he had a type advantage over the only Pokemon Ash had left, and ordered Charizard to use a Flamethrower, and Ash countered by calling for an Ice Beam, but he aimed it at the ground, not at Charizard. Having come up with a strategy, the Ice Beam going on the ground ended up creating several pillars of ice, strong enough to withstand Charizard's Flamethrower and protect Glalie against it, because Glalie could essentially just hide behind these ice pillars, and the ice pillars could take all the damage for it. And even then, the ice pillars weren't even fucking destroyed by the Flamethrower. Clark was now frustrated that Ash ruined his plan to end the battle, and ordered Charizard to use another Steel Wing as Charizard flew towards Glalie, hovering above it. Ash gets the idea to have Glalie use Double Team, so that way the Steel Wing would just hit the illusions, as opposed to Glalie himself. Clark wasn't concerned about the Double Team, however, as Charizard just destroyed all the Double Team clones, and immediately after this, since Glalie was now left wide open for a Steel Wing, Glalie was knocked back by the attack, and ended up smashing against the ice pillars that it created itself. May and Max were worried about Glalie because of this, but Ash wasn't, as he saw Glalie hitting the ice pillars it created as actually a good thing, because it wasn't just hitting one, it was hitting multiple in rapid succession. It was essentially ricocheting between each of them, like fucking pinball or some shit. That's the best way to describe it. So Ash realized that this was speeding Glalie up, so he could use this to his advantage, while Clark naively thought that Glalie hitting all the ice pillars was a bad thing for it, because it was getting damaged. Charizard tried to attack Glalie, but Glalie was too fast, just circling around it while bouncing off the pillars, making Charizard extremely confused. Seeing this, Clark tells Charizard to fly up to avoid Glalie, anticipating that Glalie was going to stop rebounding off of all the pillars and go in for an attack. But Clark was too late, because Ash ordered Glalie to use its increased speed in a head-on headbutt attack, which smashes straight into Charizard, doing more damage than a headbutt usually would, almost like a critical hit from the games, because of the increased speed. This headbutt sends Charizard flying back into one of Glalie's ice pillars, and this did enough damage to knock Charizard out. So the referee officially declared that Charizard was unable to battle, and that Ash and Glalie, alongside technically Grovyle, were the winners. So now, Ash would be going to the victory tournament, which was 6-on-6 battles. Ash then congratulates Glalie and hugs it on the awesome win, as the crowd claps and cheers for Ash, and Glalie, and Grovyle, and Brock, May, and Max cheer for Ash as well. And we then see outside of the stadium, where Brock, May, and Max had met up with Ash and congratulated him in person, when suddenly Morrison ran up to Ash shouting his name, informing him that he had won his most recent battle off screen and was therefore advancing to the victory tournament, and asked Ash how he did, getting Ash to reveal that he was heading to the victory tournament as well. And both Ash and Morrison were very excited about this, but the excitement soon turned into an argument as both of them bragged about who was going to be the champion of the league. Brock, May, and Max were very embarrassed by the argument, and thankfully Max got the opportunity to end it as he looked at his Pokénav to see what the next match was, and revealed to Ash and Morrison that Tyson's next battle was about to begin to see if he would advance to the victory tournament. Ash and Morrison became very excited to see the battle and ran off, creating dust in their tracks, displeasing May, Max, and Brock, who figured that, they could just walk at a normal fucking pace together. By the time Ash, the gang, and Morrison had all arrived at Tyson's match, it was already well underway, and he was battling a guy named Johnny, who had an Aggron and a Blastoise, and looked very physically strong, while Tyson was using his Donphan and Sceptile, the final evolved form of Trico. Now, since the battle was already well underway, Johnny had lost his Blastoise, so we didn't get to see it in action, and Tyson had lost his Donphan, so we didn't get to see it in action either. The battle was basically just Sceptile versus Aggron. Once Ash and the gang and Morrison had sat down in the audience, they were able to observe the battle, as Johnny ordered his Aggron to use Metal Claw, though Sceptile easily dodged this using a Detect, and it continued to use Detect to avoid several more Metal Claws. May, Max, and Brock were amazed by the battle, but not nearly as amazed as Ash and Morrison, because they had arrived before they did, since they ran faster, and May, Brock, and Max were still catching their breath. Anyways, Team Rocket was also in the stadium, doing their usual, serving snacks and food to people in the stands and all that, and they immediately spotted Brock, May, and Max. Jesse also spotted that May was holding Pikachu, and alerted Meowth and James to this, so therefore they decided to try and steal Pikachu. But before they could, they were distracted by a little girl who asked for some juice that they were offering, and of course, they had no choice but to give it to her, otherwise they'd get fired by their boss. Anyways, back to the battle between Sceptile and Aggron. Tyson then ordered his Sceptile to use Bullet Seed, leading Aggron to simply try and defend itself by covering its body with its hands, but it then decided that using an attack would be best, and Johnny ordered it to use a Metal Claw again, but Sceptile simply dodged once again with Detect. And just then, Team Rocket was about to use a net to capture Pikachu from May's hands, but just then, Morrison and Ash fell from the stands they were sitting in onto the ground. That led to some lower stands. It turned out that Morrison and Ash had actually just been arguing about who was going to win the league the entire time, and hadn't even been paying attention to Tyson and Johnny's battle. This fall, however, which was caused by Ash and Morrison getting a bit too rough with each other, caused Ash and Morrison to snap out of their argument, and remember that they were watching Tyson versus someone, and they excitedly watched the battle, although Max told them that it was already almost over by this point, because they'd been too busy talking. As for Team Rocket, they were depressed that they could no longer get Pikachu, since Morrison and Ash were now blocking the path that they were going to throw the net, so catching Pikachu wouldn't work. Anyways, Brock decided to catch Ash and Morrison up on what they missed. Sceptile was using its Detect move to avoid Aggron's powerful Metal Claw time and time again, and Brock realized the reason for this, which was that the more times Sceptile used Detect when Aggron attacked and missed, this meant that Aggron would get tired without even launching a single attack, and that would give Sceptile a chance to attack Aggron while it was tired, and he officially dubbed this technique the hit and run technique, since apparently other trainers had used it before. Soon after Rocket noticed the strategy, Johnny noticed it as well, and was very annoyed by it, determined to prevent it from continuing, as he had Aggron switch up from a Metal Claw to a Harden solely to defend itself instead of attack, so it wouldn't get more tired. Tyson, however, was hoping for this, as now that Aggron wasn't focusing on attacking, this could give Sceptile an opportunity to charge up a Solar Beam, and it started to do so. Although Aggron saw that Sceptile was taking so much time to charge, so it stopped using a Harden, and instead charged in with a Metal Claw straight towards Sceptile. But right as Ash and the gang developed terrified looks on their faces, along with Morrison, and when Aggron managed to land a super hard blow on Sceptile that it couldn't defend against, right at this second, Sceptile finished charging its Solar Beam, and it fired it. So, even though Sceptile was really injured, Aggron was knocked out by the Solar Beam, as it was sent smashing across the battlefield, and destroying many parts of it as a result. But Regardless, Tyson and his Sceptile, along with technically his Donphan, were declared the winners by the referee, since Aggron was unable to battle. The crowd then cheered, happy for Tyson. While Johnny simply walked out of Evergrande Conference, sad about the fact that the Sceptile was able to gain enough energy to do Solar Beam in time. As Ashley, Gang, and Morrison watched the victory screen, which showed that Tyson had now made it to the victory tournament as well. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were currently sneaking through the stands on their hands and knees, determined to go up to Ash and the gang and steal Pikachu. But unfortunately for them, their boss encountered them, seeing them on the floor, asking them what the fuck they were doing and why they weren't working, and demanded that they get back to work, leading Team Rocket, who were terrified of upsetting their boss, to quickly run away and get back to work far away from their boss, nervously calling out to the crowd in the stands all the various food items that were for sale, hoping that their boss would see this. Anyways, back with Ash and the gang, they decided to go to the Pokemon Center in Evergrande City, along with Morrison and Tyson, so that they could have dinner together and relax. Even though Morrison and Ash wanted to relax right now, they were very disappointed when Brock told them that he heard from the guidebook that tomorrow would actually be a rest day and there would be no battling, so that they could set up the victory tournament, which would begin in 2 days. So yeah, the league staff had to set up the victory tournament, so we had a 2-day hiatus. Great! And obviously, Ash and Morrison were disappointed by this. However, Ash and Morrison were able to cheer themselves up when they stated that they could just use the day to get some extra training in for the many other Evergrande Conference matches that were waiting for them, knowing that there would be plenty of difficult opponents, so they would need a whole bunch of training. Ash then asked Pikachu if he was down for more training, and Pikachu of course agreed. But that would be tomorrow. Tonight, they were just going to enjoy this very good meal. As for what May planned to do, she planned to taste some food from all over Evergrande City and all the restaurants there, as she pulled out her book of restaurants and showed it to Tyson, who claimed that he was going to come along as well. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, it seemed that they were enjoying a good meal for once as well, because as they ate this great meal in their little house from last episode that had a pretty cool light at the top that really showed Team Rocket's facial features, their boss had decided to reward Team Rocket for actually working hard today by giving them 3 free dinner meals, 1 for each of them, apologizing because he knew that he promised dessert, but that just wasn't working out right now. After their boss had admitted that he was very pleased with Team Rocket's work, he told them to keep it up, saying that with all the good food that he was giving them, they should definitely be successful. And with that, their boss then takes his exit, telling them to always do their best no matter what. Once their boss was gone, they immediately ate like fucking pigs, eating their entire meal in like 2 minutes. And Jesse suggested that they should try and capture Pikachu, since they now had a massive energy boost, according to their boss, so catching Pikachu should be easier. James and Meowth agreed, and Wobbuffet popped out as well to agree. The next day, at the Pokemon Center, where Ash, Morrison, and the rest of the gang, and Tyson were staying, Ash and Morrison woke up extremely early in the morning and opened up their curtains to let the sun into their room, which woke up everyone else in the process, but they didn't give an absolute fuck, because they needed the most time to train as possible. So they went down to have breakfast first, and they wolfed down eagerly, eating faster than they've ever ate before they finally ran off to go do some training. The first thing they do is have some sparring matches between each of their Pokemon, the main match being Ash's Pikachu versus Morrison's Metang, but they do give all of their Pokemon a shot. Ash gives Torkoal, Swellow, Glalie, Sceptile, and Corphish a shot, while Morrison gives Girafarig, Gligar, Steelix, Swampert, and Growlithe a shot as well. While Morrison and Ash were training, May and Tyson had decided to go into Evergrande City to check out some of the restaurants which May guided them to with her guidebook. Max had decided to come along as well, along with Brock. Although Max and Brock were not having nearly as much fun as me and Tyson checking out the restaurants, because Max was having trouble with Munchlax since he was trying to eat all the food at the restaurant, including 2 innocent kids' ice creams. So he had to keep feeding it more of May's Pokeblocks, like her custom-made ones, and he also had to keep dragging Brock away by the ear, because he kept flirting with all the Officer Jennies and Nurse Joys that they were passing by, since Evergrande City had a whole bunch of them, if you remember from the Torch episode. Back with Ash and Morrison, they were now done battling, and were instead racing each other in swimming in a nearby pool of water in Evergrande, because, Evergrande was full of water, and once they were done this, they saw that the sun was setting, so they took the opportunity to lay under some trees with their Pokemon, admiring the sunset, and thanking them for all the vigorous training they did today. The next day, Ash and the gang, Morrison and Tyson, went to the stadium because it was time for the victory tournament. And the first thing they all saw was, of course, the burning Moltres flame to give all the contenders some motivation. Suddenly, the announcer talked on the intercom, explaining the rules of the victory tournament. These battles would be full 6-on-6 battles, and each battle would be fought on a different randomly chosen battlefield that was chosen by a computer. The 4 options would be either grass, rock, ice, or water. Also, after 3 of a trainer's Mons had been defeated, the battlefield would change to a different one. Without further ado, it was now time for the first battle of the victory tournament, which the announcer announced was between Ash and a girl named Katie from Lily Cove City. And after a random computer generation, the first field chosen by the computer was a Sharp Rock battlefield. Before the battle actually began, we saw that several people were watching, with Ash's mom watching from her house, along with Mr. Mime, who she was currently tending to on the couch, and it was wrapped in a blanket because it was sick and all that. She was checking its fever and shit. Misty was watching from the Cerulean Gym, having just come out of the pool, and enjoying the Evergrande Conference on TV. Tracy and Oak were enjoying the Evergrande Conference on TV, after just bringing in some new books into the laboratory. And of course, you had the crowd, including May, Max, Brock, Morrison, and Tyson, watching. May then asked Max about Katie and if he had any information on her so that they could know what Ash was up against and whatever. And Max goes to check her on his Pokénav for information, but Brock stops Max, saying that he had way more information than the Pokénav could ever supply, as he pulled out his own special book filled with female trainers in the Evergrande Conference, stating that he had his own notes about ladies. So this implied that Brock knew every fucking lady in the Evergrande City League, and like that basically just implies that he'd been spying on all the women and had their information now. Alright, that's not creepy at all. Max and May obviously didn't want to go by Brock's advice, so Max pulled her up on the Pokénav anyway, and they learned a bit about her. Anyways, it was finally time for the battle to actually begin, with Ash sending out Torkoal first, and Katie sending out her Venomoth. Once the referee had officially declared that it was time for the battle to begin, Katie had her Venomoth use a Stun Spore, though Ash countered by having Torkoal use Iron Defense to withdraw into its shell to protect itself from the Stun Spore. And this works wonderfully. Katie knew that Torkoal's Iron Defense could be trouble for her, so she ordered Venomoth to use Disable, which forced Torkoal out of its shell, since Iron Defense became impossible to use now. Ash wasn't worried though, and simply just had Torkoal go for a Flamethrower, even though Brock, Max, and May were kind of worried that Torkoal couldn't use Iron Defense. Anyways, since you could substitute Pokemon in these battles, Katie had her Venomoth dodge the Flamethrower, and then quickly she substituted it out, much to Brock, Tyson, and May's shock, as she sent out a Golduck instead, since Golduck could take fire attacks better. Ash was shocked by the sudden switch as well, and knowing that Golduck had attack advantage, ordered for Torkoal to use a Body Slam as opposed to a Fire move. But before Torkoal could get this attack off, Katie just had Golduck use a Hydro Pump, which smashed straight into Torkoal, sending it flying through the air. And just as Torkoal was about to land on the ground, Katie told Golduck to use Fury Swipes. So Golduck jumped forwards towards the falling Torkoal and slashed at it over and over and over again, completely knocking it out, sending it flying across the stadium in the process as it bashes against the wall. Torkoal's sudden defeat surprised Brock, May, Max, Morrison, and Tyson, because they thought that Torkoal would have been able to hang on, at least for a little bit. And then the referee officially declared that Torkoal was unable to battle, making Katie smile, confident that she could win. Ash then recalled Torkoal and told Pikachu to get up there, since Pikachu had the advantage, being an electric type. However, Katie knew this, so immediately after Ash sent out Pikachu, she recalled her Golduck and sent out Dugtrio, which Tyson pointed out was resistant to Pikachu's electric type attacks due to being a ground type, so basically Katie was just switching based on type effectiveness. As the screen displayed all the currently revealed Pokemon of both Ash and Katie, Morrison shouted support to Ash, reminding him of the fact that Dugtrio was resistant to electric type attacks. Ash, remembering this, told Pikachu to use a normal type attack instead, Quick Attack. However, the Quick Attack didn't do any damage, as Katie ordered Dugtrio to dig, so it burrowed underground, avoiding the Quick Attack. Seeing Dugtrio gone, Pikachu stops immediately and looks around for where Dugtrio would appear from, and Ash looked around as well, trying to warn Pikachu. Suddenly, Katie calls out to Dugtrio from underground, telling it to use Sand Tomb, and it does, creating a huge vortex in the ground. Pikachu was soon pulled into this huge sandy vortex, and once it got to the center of this vortex, it saw none other than Dugtrio pop up from underground, waiting for Pikachu to come closer to it so it could attack it. Ash, desperate, told Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, since no other attacks would work against it. Since, even though Thunderbolt wouldn't really work against it in theory, Pikachu wasn't able to use any other attacks because of the position it was in, sliding down, but unfortunately, Thunderbolt didn't work because, Dugtrio was immune to ground-type attacks, and even the announcer pointed this out. Katie was a little embarrassed on Ash's behalf, thinking that he genuinely didn't know that Dugtrio was immune to electric attacks, and she quickly ordered her Dugtrio to use Double Edge on the struggling Pikachu to take it out. Miraculously though, Pikachu was able to fight against the vortex and use an Iron Tail, countering the Double Edge, but the two attacks clashed, creating an explosion, which sent Pikachu flying, and it was knocked out above ground. Leaving May, Max, Brock, Tyson, and Morrison shocked when the referee officially declared Pikachu unable to battle, and Morrison quickly shouted encouragement at Ash so that he didn't lose motivation, and Ash proceeded to pick up Pikachu and bring it over to his little spot where he was supposed to stand, showing that it couldn't battle again, but he wanted Pikachu to be by his side during the battle at least, and he thanked Pikachu for doing its best, before sending out his next Pokemon, Glalie. Katie saw an opportunity to try and trap Glalie in the vortex as well, if she managed to bring the sandstorm up to the sky, so she quickly told Dugtrio to dig again, but before Dugtrio could use Sand Tomb, was still underground, Ash told Glalie to use Headbutt on the ground, which causes strong shockwaves to go underground, forcing Dugtrio to come out from underground because it was so uncomfortable. And with Dugtrio now out in the open, Ash told Glalie to use an Ice Beam, which smashes into Dugtrio and knocks it out, as the referee officially declares that Dugtrio was unable to battle. Ash quickly congratulates Glalie, as Glalie smiles. However, Katie was unfazed by Dugtrio's defeat, and simply sent out her Misdreavus next. May, Brock, Tyson, Max, and Morrison were all pleased that Ash was able to beat Dugtrio, and Max happily remarks that Glalie took no damage during the battle. So it was essentially a new Pokemon for Ash, ready for this battle with Misdreavus. Ash thought this as well, and confidently told Glalie to use an Ice Beam. Much to Ash's confusion, Misdreavus actually gets really damaged from the Ice Beam, because Katie didn't even tell Misdreavus to dodge or use an attack of its own. Ash didn't know why Katie did this, but he saw a chance to attack again, and told Glalie to use Headbutt. And Glalie did so, smashing straight into Misdreavus, since Katie didn't order Misdreavus to dodge once again. However, Katie then told her Misdreavus to use Destiny Bond, which Brock knew was an attack that caused your opponent's Pokemon to also faint if the user of Destiny Bond fainted. So, Destiny Bond takes effect, as Misdreavus was officially declared unable to battle by the referee when it hit the ground, fainted. But just then, a purple glow came out from the knocked out Mr. body, which was the Destiny Bond, and this Destiny Bond infected Glalie right as Ash was congratulating Glalie on its victory. And the Destiny Bond then took effect, and Glalie was entirely wrapped in a purple glow before being knocked out along with Mischievous. So the battle was officially a tie, at least for this round. Shocking Ash, wondering what happened to Glalie, as he didn't know about Destiny Bond and its effects, while Max and Brock just continued to explain about Destiny Bond to Tyson, Morrison, and May. Katie just smiles when she sees Ash shocked, and the final thing we see in the episode is a shot of the screen that showed the status of Ash and Katie's team. Katie had shown off 4 of her Pokemon, 2 of which were defeated, and 2 of which were not. And there were also 2 other Pokemon that she hadn't shown yet. And as for Ash's, he had revealed 3 of his Pokemon, and the 3 that he had revealed were all fainted. But he still had 3 Pokemon that he hadn't shown yet: Swellow, Grovyle, and Corphish. Ash knew that Katie had more Pokemon than him currently, but he was still confident he could win.